The soft crunch of gravel beneath Jacob's boots was a sound he hadn't heard in years, and it was oddly comforting. His old property, nestled between tall, whispering pines and thick oaks, was a modest two-story cabin with weathered wooden beams and a wraparound porch that had seen better days. It sat on a few acres of land, just outside a small neighborhood but deep enough in the woods to give him the solitude he craved. Hey, just before we jump into the crazy details, do us a quick favor. Drop a comment below letting us know which city you're watching from. It might sound small, but it really boosts our channel and helps more people discover these stories. And while you're at it, smash that like button and subscribe to stay up to date on all the insane HOA, Karen, and neighborhood saga videos we've got coming. He sighed, running a hand through his short-cropped hair as he surveyed the place. It had been 5 years since he had last set foot here. 5 years of sandstorms, gunfire, sleepless nights, and orders barked through radio static. His service in the military had taken him across continents, from scorching deserts to dense jungles. But now, it was over. He was home. "Come on, Scout," Jacob said, giving a quick whistle. His German shepherd, his companion through it all, bounded out of the truck and sniffed the air, tail wagging. Scout had been with him during his last deployment, a loyal partner who had saved his life more than once. The dog darted ahead, exploring the yard but always circling back to Jacob, as if making sure he was still there. Jacob's goal was simple: peace. He didn't need anything fancy, just a quiet life where he could repair the damage inside him, one project at a time. He had plans: fix up the old porch, mend the roof, plant a garden. His property wasn't part of the homeowners association, so he figured he could do things on his terms. He unpacked a few essentials and stood on the porch, taking in the scent of pine and damp earth. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to breathe. The next few days passed in a flurry of activity. Jacob mowed the overgrown lawn, repaired a section of the porch railing, and cleared the fallen branches from the small backyard. Scout was never far, often lounging in the sun or chasing squirrels. By the end of the week, Jacob felt the satisfying ache of a hard day's work and the faintest hint of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could rebuild more than just the property. On a quiet morning, as he sat on the porch sipping his coffee, he heard the distant hum of an engine. A white car slowly cruised down the dirt road leading to his house before stopping briefly by his mailbox. The driver didn't get out, but he saw the arm extend, slipping something inside. The car lingered for a moment before turning around and disappearing down the road. Frowning, Jacob set his mug down and walked to the mailbox. Inside, he found a neatly folded letter with an official-looking HOA letterhead. "That's odd," he muttered, ripping it open. The letter was addressed to him by name, which surprised him even more. It began with a formal greeting, followed by a list of issues related to his property. The lawn was not properly maintained. The exterior paint of the house was peeling. The porch needed repairs. Failure to comply, it warned, may result in fines and further action. Please contact the HOA representative at the number provided. Jacob scoffed. "What the hell is this? I'm not even in the damn HOA." He crumpled the letter and tossed it into the trash, determined to ignore it. He wasn't going to let some bureaucratic nonsense ruin his peace. But as the day wore on, the letter gnawed at him. What if they tried to escalate things? The last thing he wanted was to deal with legal issues. By evening, he decided to do the responsible thing. He retrieved the letter from the trash, smoothed it out, and dialed the number. The phone rang twice before a woman's voice answered, sugary and sharp, like honey over broken glass. "Hello, this is Karen McNeil, head of the HOA. How may I help you?" Jacob sighed, already regretting the call. "Hi, this is Jacob Moore. I got a letter saying I need to fix up my property, but I think there's been a mistake. My house isn't part of the HOA." There was a pause, followed by the distinct sound of papers shuffling. "Oh, Mr. Moore! Yes, I have your file right here," Karen said, her tone brightening in a way that set Jacob on edge. "I understand your confusion, but your property is within our jurisdiction. We recently expanded our coverage to include a few homes on the edge of the neighborhood, including yours." "That doesn't make any sense," Jacob replied, gripping the phone tighter. "No one told me about this. I didn't agree to be part of any HOA. Karen let out a condescending laugh. Well, the decision was made by the board. It's all perfectly legal, I assure you. You should have received a notice months ago. Perhaps you missed it while you were away? The way she said it made Jacob's blood simmer. He took a deep breath, trying to keep his temper in check. Look, I just want to be left alone. I'm not interested in joining the HOA, and I don't see why I should have to follow your rules. Oh, Mr. Moore, she cooed. It's not about interest. It's about community standards. Now, I suggest you review the letter carefully and start making the necessary changes. We wouldn't want things to escalate, would we? Jacob felt the familiar tension in his shoulders, the same tension he'd felt during standoffs overseas. But this wasn't a battlefield. It was his home. He had fought for the right to come back to peace, and he wasn't about to let someone like Karen take that away from him. I'll think about it, he said through clenched teeth before hanging up. Scout, sensing his agitation, trotted over and nudged Jacob's hand with his nose. We're not done yet, buddy, Jacob muttered, scratching the dog behind the ears. Not by a long shot. The next morning, Jacob opened his front door to find another letter waiting for him. It lay on the porch like an unwelcome guest, sealed in an envelope bearing the now familiar HOA logo. He bent down, picked it up, and tore it open right there on the spot, the crisp paper crinkling in his rough hands. His eyes scanned the contents, his pulse quickening with every line. Notice of fine. Failure to address initial violations has resulted in the following penalties. $500 for lawn maintenance violations, $350 for porch disrepair, $200 for exterior upkeep. Total amount due, $1,050. Failure to pay within 14 days may result in legal escalation. Jacob cursed under his breath, crumpling the letter into a ball and throwing it toward the porch railing. Scout, who had been lounging nearby, perked his ears at the sudden outburst. I'm not paying a damn dime, Jacob muttered, pacing back and forth across the porch. He could feel the anger simmering beneath his skin, threatening to boil over. This wasn't what he came home for. He wasn't about to let some overreaching HOA bully him into submission. He stomped back inside, grabbed his phone, and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he was looking for. Frank Hargrove, attorney at law, a familiar gravelly voice answered after the second ring. Jacob? Been a while. Too long, Jacob replied, trying to keep the frustration out of his voice. Listen, Frank, I need your help. I've got some HOA nonsense going on, and they're trying to fine me for violations on my own property. There was a pause on the other end. HOA? I thought your place wasn't part of one. It wasn't. Apparently, they expanded their coverage while I was deployed and decided my house falls under their jurisdiction now. I didn't sign anything. I didn't agree to this. Frank let out a low whistle. That sounds shady as hell. Did they notify you? If they did, I never got it. And now they're slapping me with over $1,000 in fines. I need to know if they can actually pull this off. Let me guess, Frank said, his tone darkening. Karen McNeil? Jacob blinked, caught off guard. How do you know? Frank chuckled, but it wasn't a warm sound. She's infamous around here. I've dealt with her before. Power-hungry, loves pushing boundaries. But don't worry, we've got options. Relief washed over Jacob, though it was tempered by the lingering irritation in his chest. What do you suggest? First, I'll need to look over any documents they've sent you. If they expanded their jurisdiction without proper notice or legal grounds, we can fight this. I've taken down Karen before, and I'd be more than happy to do it again. Jacob exhaled, his grip on the phone loosening. Thanks, Frank. I'll drop off the paperwork today. Good. And Jacob, don't pay them a cent until I say otherwise. You won't have to worry about that. As he hung up, a sense of satisfaction rippled through him. For the first time since the whole mess started, he felt like he was back in control. Scout nudged his leg, tail wagging. Come on, boy, Jacob said, grabbing the crumpled letter from the porch. We've got some documents to gather. Let's see how Karen likes dealing with someone who fights back. Scout barked, as if in agreement, and trotted after him. The battle with the HOA was far from over, but Jacob had faced worse enemies before. This time, he wasn't fighting alone. After the conversation with Frank, Jacob couldn't shake the nagging thought that things weren't going to end with just a few letters. His gut told him to stay on high alert, and experience had taught him to trust that instinct. That same evening, he installed a surveillance camera facing the front yard, ensuring it had a clear view of the porch, the driveway, and the surrounding area. Scout sat by him the whole time, observing with quiet curiosity. "Just in case, boy," Jacob said, patting the dog's head. "I don't trust her." It turned out his paranoia wasn't misplaced. The next night, long after the sun had set and the woods had fallen silent, the camera picked up movement. Karen McNeil, wearing a dark jacket and carrying a small camcorder, crept up the driveway. She moved cautiously, as if trying to avoid detection, but her flashlight occasionally flicked on as she inspected the lawn and porch. Jacob had no idea what she was looking for, but he could guess. More supposed violations to document for her HOA report. Her obsession with control was getting ridiculous. Scout, who had been resting on the porch, noticed the movement before Jacob did. The dog's ears perked up, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Within seconds, Scout was off the porch and charging toward the intruder. Karen barely had time to react before the German Shepherd lunged, knocking her to the ground. Her camcorder flew out of her hands, landing with a thud in the grass. She let out a piercing scream as she scrambled to get up, but Scout barked and circled her, preventing her escape. Jacob, hearing the commotion, bolted outside. "Scout, down!" he shouted, rushing toward them. The dog obeyed instantly, backing off but keeping his eyes locked on Karen, who was panting and shaking as she tried to collect herself. "What the hell are you doing here, Karen?" Jacob demanded, his voice sharp. I was just checking on the property," she stammered, brushing dirt off her jacket. "I have the right to—" "No, you don't," Jacob cut her off. He picked up her camcorder and glanced at the screen, which was still recording. "Looking for more violations, huh? Trying to build a case against me?" Karen's face turned red, but she didn't deny it. "You need to follow the rules, Jacob. It's for the good of the community." "Get off my property," Jacob said, his tone cold. "And if you ever set foot here again without permission, you won't just be dealing with Scout. You'll be dealing with the police." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but thought better of it. She turned and hurried down the driveway, limping slightly as she disappeared into the night. Jacob stood there for a moment, watching her retreat. He looked down at Scout, who sat calmly by his side, tail wagging. "Good boy," Jacob said, kneeling to rub the dog's neck. "Let's see what Frank thinks of this footage." With Karen's camcorder in hand and Scout trotting beside him, Jacob headed back inside. The battle was escalating, but he was ready for whatever came next. Frank wasted no time after Jacob handed over the footage and a detailed recount of the incident. He filed a formal complaint with the local authorities for trespassing, harassment, and invasion of privacy. Alongside that, a civil lawsuit against Karen was set in motion, claiming emotional distress and damages to Jacob's property rights. "This footage is golden," Frank said, reviewing the video of Karen sneaking around with her camcorder. "It proves her intent to harass you and gather evidence for her own agenda. Courts don't like people abusing their authority. She'll have a hard time explaining this." "Good," Jacob said, leaning back in his chair. "I don't want her just getting a slap on the wrist. She needs to understand she can't push people around." Within weeks, Karen received notice of the lawsuit and a subpoena to appear in court. Word quickly spread through the neighborhood, and the reputation she had carefully built within the HOA began to crumble. Some residents even reached out to Jacob privately, offering their support and sharing their own stories of Karen's overreach. The day of the hearing arrived, and the small courtroom buzzed with quiet conversation as Karen sat stiffly at her table, avoiding eye contact with Jacob. Frank, calm and confident, laid out their case with precision, playing the surveillance footage and highlighting Karen's pattern of harassment. "Relax," Frank said, leaning in. "This is our game to lose." Jacob nodded, but couldn't help the tension coiling in his chest. The bailiff called the courtroom to order, and the judge, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, entered and took her seat. As proceedings began, Frank wasted no time presenting their case. "Your Honor, this case isn't simply about HOA violations. It's about abuse of power and harassment. Miss McNeil repeatedly trespassed on my client's property, documented here in surveillance footage." He gestured toward a screen where the video played, Karen sneaking through Jacob's yard with her camcorder, flashlight in hand. The judge watched the video intently, her expression hardening. "Is this footage time-stamped?" she asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Frank replied. "The night of October 15th. Karen's attorney rose, buttoning his suit. "Your Honor, my client was merely performing her duties as HOA president, ensuring the neighborhood adhered to community standards. Her intent wasn't malicious. Climbing over fences at midnight doesn't sound like standard HOA procedure," the judge interrupted. Her voice was calm, but the rebuke was sharp. Karen shifted uncomfortably, whispering urgently to her attorney. "Furthermore," Frank continued, "my client has endured emotional distress as a result of Miss McNeil's repeated attempts to intimidate him. She imposed fines and issued threats despite having no clear jurisdiction over his property. This behavior goes beyond the scope of her duties." Frank then presented a series of emails Karen had sent Jacob, each one increasingly demanding and hostile. "Failure to comply will result in further action," Frank read aloud, quoting one of the emails. "She treated my client as though he were a criminal, and when that wasn't enough, she trespassed to gather more evidence." The judge turned her attention to Karen's attorney. "Do you have any explanation for this escalation?" The attorney shuffled his papers and cleared his throat. "Your Honor, while we admit that Miss McNeil may have acted overzealously, her intentions were to protect property values and maintain the integrity of the neighborhood." Jacob couldn't help but let out a quiet scoff, which Frank quickly covered with a reassuring hand on his arm. "Intentions aside," the judge said, "the evidence shows a pattern of behavior that this court cannot ignore." Karen's attorney sat down, defeated. "Miss McNeil," the judge said, her tone final, "your behavior was unacceptable. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Moore. You are hereby ordered to pay $10,000 in damages for emotional distress and legal fees. Furthermore, you are forbidden from any further contact with Mr. Moore or his property. Failure to comply will result in further legal consequences." The gavel struck. Jacob exhaled, relief washing over him like a wave. Outside the courthouse, Frank clapped him on the back. "You did good, Jacob. It's over." The morning after the court ruling, Jacob found himself standing on his porch, enjoying the cool breeze and the sound of birds chirping. Scout lounged lazily by his feet when he noticed a car pull into his driveway. It wasn't just one car. 2 more followed, and soon a small group of neighbors gathered at his front steps. "Jacob!" called out an older woman named Helen, who lived 2 houses down. She waved enthusiastically as she approached. "I just wanted to say thank you. We all do." She gestured toward the others, who nodded in agreement. Jacob raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For standing up to Karen," a man named Tom said. "We've been dealing with her antics for years, but no one had the guts to fight back. You did, and now she's gone. You've made life easier for all of us." Helen stepped forward, a warm smile on her face. "And Jacob, we were talking. The HOA is in shambles without a head, and we think you'd be the perfect person to lead it. You've shown you're responsible, you care about the neighborhood, and most importantly, you know how to stand up to bullies." Jacob chuckled softly, scratching the back of his neck. "I appreciate the offer, but I didn't fight her for power. I just wanted my peace." "Exactly," Tom said. "That's why you're the right person. You don't want to control people, you just want things to be fair. We need someone like that." Scout let out a playful bark, as if encouraging Jacob to consider it. Jacob sighed, looking out at the group of grateful faces. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "But if I do this, we're doing it differently. No more Karen-style micromanaging." Helen beamed. "That's all we ask. Thank you, Jacob. You've done more for this neighborhood than you realize." As the neighbors filtered away, Jacob sat on the porch with Scout, stroking the dog's fur thoughtfully. He had come home seeking peace, and now he had a chance to help others find theirs as well. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the worst idea after all. "What do you think, boy?" Jacob asked. Scout licked his hand in response. Jacob smiled. "Yeah, we'll see." For the first time in a long while, the future felt hopeful. Thank you for watching this story unfold. If you enjoyed following Jacob's journey and want to see more stories like this, Please give this video a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means the world to us.